Hello, friends. Good afternoon. We'll give a few more minutes. People are joining us now. I see we have 28 participants right now. We have over 100 registered, so it's going to be an interesting discussion, and I'm very happy to have my very dear friends, Lyuba Shipovich and Dmytro Kavun from Dignitas today with us. We'll start in a minute. I see people are still joining, and we'll have, again, I really want to have a dialogue and a very frank or candid discussion of what is happening here in the U.S. And because of the third year anniversary that none of us want to commemorate, or none of us want to really think about it, that it's been already 3 years. And Lyuba and Dmytro were the ones who I actually met the beginning of war together on the same Zoom. I mean, maybe not slightly different, but we were together that Wednesday at 10:20 p.m. talking about how we can join forces, and we did join forces. And as you can see, and we'll talk about other projects from United Help Ukraine, a lot of really interesting and very important initiatives from Dignitas as well. And I'll introduce Lyuba and Dmytro, and they'll talk about a little more about themselves, but also would be interesting to see where we stand as nonprofit organizations here in the US, in Ukraine. What we hear, Lyuba, is a constant a driver of humanitarian aid. And I see, Lyuba, you post all the time that you're taking supplies to the front lines, and Dignitas is doing a lot to support Ukrainian army and has been doing a lot to support Ukrainian army, as well as United Help Ukraine. And for us, I think we had a couple of also powerful and important collaborations, and we want to continue that. But we also want to take questions. Again, as I said, I wanted to have a more informal discussion that people who are here on this call can put you can put your questions in the chat. So you see Q&A with the mark, and put your questions in the chat. We want to address them all. In case we don't answer your questions, you're free to email us, call us. Again, we want you to ask questions, bring your suggestions. We're always open for collaborations. We have held several webinars that are monthly. They're usually the last Wednesday of the month at the same time. But we also held our first town hall meeting. This is when there was a 90-day pause for the US aid funding. It was a while back. Things are changing dramatically, as we can see in the approach of the current government to the situation in Ukraine, to the war, to the Russian aggression, the rhetorics, how they describe Russian aggression in Ukraine. And I think this is also important for us to be together today, talk about 3 years of bravery and resilience of Ukrainian people, but also to talk about the hard work that is happening behind the scenes for delivery of crucial supplies, crucial aid to the front lines, to the people of Ukraine. And so we also will talk how the current administration's shift in response may affect the future of Ukraine. So that was just a bit of the introduction, and I wanted people to join. And my name is Marina Bayduk, and I'm the President and Executive Director of United Help Ukraine. And this is my great pleasure to introduce two wonderful friends of mine, Lyuba Shipovich, who is a CEO and a co-founder of Dignitas, and Dmytro Kavun, President and co-founder of Dignitas, who are here today to commemorate the third anniversary of full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine, to talk about how we met back in 2014 with Lyuba and Dmytro, and then while they were at Razum, and how we met the war in 2022, and how we talked about it, what was our view of the situation in Ukraine in 2022 versus 3 years later. So I'll give the floor to Lyuba Shipovich, who is with us today. And thanks so much, Lyuba. Great to see you, even though we never have time to even have a coffee, probably like once or twice we just sit down for coffee, but always working, always running, always full of ideas. So Lyuba, thanks so much for joining. Tell us a little bit about yourself first and how you got to Dignitas and where you are right now. And then what is your view of how we view, and I can chime in on that as well, how we view the war back in 2022 and what do we see now in 2025?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for introduction, Marina. As Marina mentioned already, I was in slightly different role when the full-scale invasion started back in 2022. I was a business owner. I was owner of fintech company, and at the same time, I was vice president of Razom. And most of the people still know me as a co-founder of Razom, first president and vice president. So when the full-scale invasion started, immediately I paused my business. I had teams in 2 countries, in the United States and in Ukraine. In Ukraine, I paid people 3 months' salary and told them that they know where to go. Most of Ukrainian team joined Ukrainian armed forces. And besides 2 guys currently working for Dignitas in our IT team. And together with Dmytro and more than 200 other people, we focused on providing support to the Ukrainian armed forces, mostly on tactical medicine and technology. Through the year of 2022, we've been able to provide supplies to Ukrainian army on amount, I believe it was about $68 million or something in tactical medicine and technology, mostly reconnaissance drones. Back at the time, it was mostly Chinese drones, which is different from what we are providing right now. But to finish my story, at the beginning of 2023, our military team of Razom decided to part from Razom and create a new NGO to fully focus on technological support of Ukrainian armed forces. So since 2023, we have a team on 2 continents in America, both in Canada and United States, and on the European continent in Ukraine, and currently in 3 European countries already. So what we do, we train army on technology, we supply army with technology, and we advocate for technological changes within Ukraine and outside Ukraine. For the first initiative, training, you probably heard of the biggest training project called Victory Drones. Just recently, we also started new project called Victory Robots. It's for ground drones. And we also have training program for veterans called Fly to Recovery. As of now, we trained more than 200,000 military personnel on usage technology. So it's like 5th part of Ukrainian army went through our trainings. With our instructors working, I believe, in every training center of Ukrainian armed forces and on the front line, directly in the brigades training military on using drones, using military software, using Starlinks, tablets, even smartphones, because using smartphone in your civilian line and using smartphone on the front line is like completely different. So people have to be trained on usage all this technology, on following cybersecurity rules and so on. Dima might cover this topic in depth. And by training people, we also want to supply them, but we are not just procuring drones and provide an army with those drones. We are trying to advocate the government to procure drones. So we cover areas which are non-covered by government as of now. So, for example, we just recently stopped to procure fiber optics drones because the government started to procure them. So we go to new technology, we test it, we buy some amount, we train people, and at the same time we advocate in Ministry of Defense, procurement agency of the Ministry of Defense to start procuring this type of technology. So for every project, we are trying to see exit from this project, and the exit should be transferring technology and processes to our Ministry of Defense, to general staff, and to the government agencies. So
And I,
yeah,
you touch Dmytro, I'll come back to you, but Lyuba, you touched a really good point. I was going to ask, and I don't know if people are asking that question or not. So we're talking about Ukrainian government, and then my question to you, I'm just curious because you work with the Ministry of Defense, you work directly with the Office of President, and I know you've met with the chief in commander several times, and different chiefs of commander in several times, including Valery Zaluzhny and Syrskyi. So the question is, how difficult it is to get the advocacy work off, how difficult it was to get the advocacy work off the ground, convincing, because you have definitely a lot of knowledge from what's happening on the front lines. You come with that knowledge to Ukrainian government officials and generals and military personnel, and you sit down and you talk. How that conversation goes, how difficult it is to convince them that's what's gonna need to happen.
That's a very good question. Advocacy itself, it's not difficult. Like we meet with General Syrskyi few times a month. We meet with Minister of Defense. We meet with Minister of Strategic Development. Like we meet with deputies like few times a week. So it's mostly like working sessions. But when like some meetings, it's not the entire advocacy project. So the difficulty comes with implementing decisions because I don't know if it's because of the war that we have lack of people and experts at the government level, or like this movement of bringing new faces to the government after the last election. But the truth is that there is a lack of professional people on the government level who can actually write legislative documents. Like when we are working on some advocacy projects, we need to prepare the document by ourselves. So we have to write down like draft of president's order, of minister's orders. And when we have this in draft, then the advocacy starts. Then we go through like one deputy minister to another deputy minister, asking them to sign the document. So it's different from US advocacy when you just speak to your representatives and asking them to do something. In Ukraine, it's different. You're just asking them to sign what you just wrote.
Thanks, Lyuba. Actually, this is a good segue, Dmytro, to you, because Dmytro is here, and Lyuba is in Kiev, in Ukraine, and I met her during my last trip about a year ago, and it was great to see your office. Are you still there at the same office that I met you at last year?
Yeah.
That was very, very nice. And Dmytro is here, and we also constantly meet and talk about overall current situation, how organizations can join forces and what we see on the ground in Ukraine, and compare the notes here, because Dmytro is, as Unite Help Ukraine as well, and me personally, we all are involved in advocacy work here in the US. And Lyuba just described what they do in Ukraine, but I just want to turn the table to Dmytro, who has been going to Ukraine Action Summits, I think for several years now. Very active member of the coalition, and also Dmytro can tell us a little more about yourself, and then your role in Dignitas, and really what is it that you see? Because I know we just had Ukraine Days up on the Hill. There was 3 days of advocacy work finishing up now. You also attended a really important conference on the war against Ukraine, Russian war against Ukraine today, and you're still there. So just give us kind of a brief introduction of yourself, maybe not brief, but whatever, take your time. Tell us about yourself, and then what is your role, what is your view, and what is it that you've heard in the past couple of days? Because what we hear is really disturbing, right? We hear UN resolution that US sided with Russia, North Korea, and Belarus against Ukraine, against acknowledging a very basic thing, that was an aggression, it was an act of aggression, and there is a war that Russia caused. And also, of course, we all want peace, but peace must be just and must be long-lasting. So what is that Ukrainian community is doing in here on the Hill?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marina, for introduction and kind words. So my name is Dmytro Kavun. I have been in US for a number of years, a couple of decades, and basically, started volunteering back in, during Maidan Revolution, met up with Lyuba at one of the events, and the rest is history in that respect, in the sense that we joined Razom and then, co-founded Dignitas along with her and a team of other motivated individuals. So in my professional life outside of volunteering for Ukraine, I'm a cybersecurity professional, and that's a very interesting field to be in, because it's almost like a mirror of what's going on in the geopolitical world. It happens in the cyber world. Cyber is a big component of the war perspective, any war, and the world situation. So, and we can maybe have a sidebar on the influence of how the cyber world changed since the beginning of full-scale invasion. But yeah, focusing on the technology, right? The reason why we do what we do is because we think it's very important not just to help Ukraine, just in general. We are focused on helping Ukraine win as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And in our opinion, that is through helping the Ukrainian defenders. And because if there's no defenders, there are no civilians to be there. But we can't just have enough defenders. There's comparatively, Ukraine is much smaller than Russia, so we are looking for factors that can help us be more efficient in the fight against Russia, and that is through the use of technology, including drones, but not only drones. And Lyuba already covered the training aspect of things. That's absolutely amazing. The numbers that are coming out of the training sessions and the variety of the training aspects that we're engaged in that respect. However, I personally ask myself, what am I doing here in the US that I can be as effective as possible to help Ukraine? And, donations are very important, but advocacy is even more important. So I am justifying this as a more of a strategic aspect, is an advocacy, as well as tactical thing as an enabling defenders in Ukraine. there is a good saying, if you want to help thousands, donate to a charity. If you want to help millions, change a policy. And we are engaged in both in that respect. We have been advocating for Ukraine since the beginning of full-scale invasion. There's been a number of trips that we've made since 22. Some of them are known as American Coalition for Ukraine, ACU, and Ukraine Action Summit. Some of them are with UCCA, the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. But the point is that what we're trying to achieve is to focus on voicing our opinions as United States citizens, that Ukraine is important, not only for the Ukrainians. Understood that we're biased a little bit because we come from there. However, Ukraine is important for the national security of the United States and the stability of the global order, geopolitical order, and the economic balance of the world. That's very important. So these events are very important, and every time I question myself whether going to DC is an effective use of my time and resources, and then at the end of the trip, I usually come with an answer that yes, this is important. I'll tell you why. More specifically, as the geopolitical situation is very fragile right now, I've learned a couple of takeaways. I think this is my 7th trip to DC, honestly, over these past 3 years. But again, the results of advocacy are very important to highlight, and sometimes they're not as visible as other results. For example, as you donate and buy a drone and give it to somebody. But policy changes, there has been policy changes that we were able all together achieve with these trips. So we need to do more advocacy from the grassroots efforts, from the constituents at all districts. Politics is local, so you can, besides going to the DC to advocate at the DC offices, you can also start with your local representatives, because sometimes they are in that comfort of their home, and it's easier to meet with them locally to talk about why Ukraine is important, why it's not just somewhere out there, that it's very, again, those talking points that I mentioned, the global stability, economic, geopolitical, and the national security of the United States. So starting with local politics is very important. And then, another way is to call your Congress representatives. They are listening. We've asked a number of them about how to engage with them from hearing them, and some of them said, listen, you are already engaging with us. It's good that you're doing these trips. You can also call. They are listening to all of the calls, recorded calls or live calls. They summarize that information on a weekly basis. They deliver that to the Congress, their Congress representatives. Based on that, they make decisions. And it's very important to make these develop these relationships with Senate and House side, but also developing relationships with their staffers. Staffers are people who are doing most of the work to prepare the representatives to make the legislature itself. So we need, as a community, and I want to caveat that with the fact that it's not just Ukrainian community that's going to these events. There's probably around 20% that Americans who do not have affiliation, do not have Ukrainian roots, they go to these events because they know that they are important. A lot of these Americans are, were with with, previously either with some sort of law enforcement or military background, because they know exactly how dangerous Russia is and has been as one of the primary adversaries of the United States. So
that's great.
troops.
I have, sorry, I'm gonna make a quick question before you make a summary. Compared to like previous trips to the Hill, how is the mood changing now that you were there just, I mean, yesterday and today? How is the mood changed since the last time you were there with the previous administration?
That's a good question. I was asking exactly myself that question, and there are good and bad developments on that front. So there is certainly, the change has been drastic in the sense that there's, a lot of control on the Republican side of the aisle, and there is some reconciliation that's going inside the Republican Party. And we've met with both the Democrats and Republicans are still very supportive of Ukraine. I'm glad to see that not everyone is changing the direction on a dime, and they stick to the core values, because this is what they are, right? Ukraine is fighting for its freedom, independence, and democracy. So
I believe we lost Dmytro for a second, right? Lyuba, do you see that too?
Yep.
Okay, we lost.
Frozen.
He is frozen, but that's okay. He'll come back to us in a minute. While we're waiting for Dmytro, Lyuba, question to you, and then Dmytro will chime in as well, I'm sure. From Olena from North Carolina, what can Americans interested in assisting Ukraine with this war do to help United Help Ukraine and Dignitas, both in the US and Ukraine?
So as a technological NGO, we believe that technology is what help us to stand against much bigger country, and what was a game changer in this war, and I believe for all modern wars from now on. And we are speaking not only about drones, but about technology overall. Like it's the first war where you can like pretty much in real time follow all development on the battlefield. You can see streams from the battlefield using Starlink and other satellite systems. People can operate drones and robotic systems far away from the front line. There are units fighting on the front line, but sitting in Kyiv, in the capital. So I believe investing into technology is what can help Ukraine, and not only by donating into technology, but also by development technological changes within your countries. You like if you work in academia world, you can bring together technological universities like MIT, Stanford, Brooklyn Tech, or others to work on technological issues for Ukraine, on some developments that are happening in Ukraine. For example, what we are currently looking for is optical navigation, working in GPS denied environment, swarm of drones, so automatic targeting, this like issue of the last mile on the highly jammed area, and others, and also a number of software solutions. So I can share with you like more specific issues that Ukrainians and other countries willing to help Ukraine are working on right now. So all these technological challenges could be solved from any place on the planet. You don't need to be seated in Ukraine to work on this. Also, people could help by starting businesses in technological area, creating joint ventures, living in the United States, having access to the huge capital. You can create joint ventures with Ukrainian manufacturers and bring US money to Ukrainian manufacturers to speed up production, to scale up Ukrainian manufacturers and make money on this. While a lot of business owners, even from US, pretending that they are working on dual use stuff, or even sometimes civilian technologies in Ukraine, they are making money on Ukrainian war. So why Ukrainian Americans cannot do this? So if you have connections in the United States and also have connections in Ukraine, you might be like agents of Ukrainian manufacturers in the United States. You have the ability to connect American companies with the front line, with customers, and get feedback right away, and like actually make money on this. At the same time, helping Ukraine to get all this technology to the front line to be able to stand against Russia.
Great, thanks so much, Lyuba. And Dmytro, this is a question to you as well. You, I know you had unstable internet connection, but I think this is important. This is just to continue and maybe summarize what you were saying. What can Americans interested in assisting Ukraine with this war do to help UHU and Dignitas in Ukraine? Really, bottom line, right? We all have one goal: to support Ukraine and to win this war. But what they can do here in the US, because Lyuba was mostly talking about what they can do to support Ukraine directly and indirectly, but what is that they can do here in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give a couple of ideas, but the list is certainly not exhaustive. As Lyuba mentioned, there's a myriad of ways that you can help Ukraine. Besides advocating for Ukraine and just literally calling your representatives and saying 3 words: help Ukraine win. That's all that the basic message that we're trying to make sure that comes through. Advocacy is important. The other thing is one can find a nonprofit organization and join the forces to volunteer, or find a position that suits better to help Ukraine. I can't say how much I've learned in the past 11 years. Lyuba posted recently a post asking, hey, how do you remember yourself 12 years ago? And I looked back and thought about who I was back then and who I am right now, and I realized that I've gained so much experience that I've probably haven't learned in all of my life in that respect, because volunteering is powerful in the sense that when you have motivation to help, you are not afraid to start doing something new and learn something new from scratch. A lot of the things that I've started back in 2014, were things I've never done in my life. But hey, listen, if there is a will, there is a way. So I would certainly encourage people to volunteer with the organization of their choice. And also, if they don't have an organization, just start volunteering. You don't need an organization to volunteer. You can start basically at the basic level and do one small change a day, It's very important to realize that we live in this information world where we are getting a lot of news, and some of this news is concerning, and it's hard for us as humans to process so much information as much as a lot of that information is negative, because the war is negative in that respect. But what's important to realize that is, rather than spending time and reading and processing and arguing maybe unnecessarily, you can feel a lot better by doing something, taking an action, donating to a fundraiser that you found, that your friend shared, resharing that fundraiser, and basically getting engaged. That action is a very powerful way to deal and cope with stress, anger, and anxiety in that respect. So that's just generally in that respect that I would encourage people to do, and be creative about, opening their mind about the possibilities of how they can help Ukraine.
Thanks. And actually, within these lines, there was a comment from Al Berg. It would be helpful for us to have some written talking points that reference specific actions we want our reps to take, support for specific bill or resolution, etc., when calling or emailing our representatives. And I'm Al. We have now in the chat, so you see one of the links to American Coalition for Ukraine, what you can do, and it has the language, it has what you can definitely use that to help you reach out to your particular representative. And Al also mentioned, there was great comment, and we will work on that as well. As a coalition, and also as individual organizations, it would be helpful or good to come up with some guidance for social media posts we could share with our personal networks to combat misinformation and remind them of the importance of U.S. support for Ukraine to people in Ukraine and the U.S. Great comments, absolutely love it. If you follow United Help Ukraine, American Coalition for Ukraine, Dignitas, and other Ukrainian organizations, you will see we work together, we all cooperate and coordinate our messaging. And what you just mentioned is absolutely true and essential. Right now is a crucial point for Ukraine. We all know it. And it's like Dmytro said, talking to Republicans, a lot of them are still supporting Ukraine. They're not changing. They're not shifting in their beliefs and what's true. So I think it's important for all of us to make that noise, I wouldn't say noise, but get that message across that we all stand with Ukraine and we continue to support as much as we can. Thanks, Al. Those are great ones. Please see the chat for links. Question to Lyuba. Yuri Yankovsky is asking, hi, Yura. Yuri is asking, Lyuba, looking at a large variety of Ukrainian-oriented nonprofit organizations in the US, such as Razum, UHU, Nova Ukraine, KSE, Dignitas, and others, what is your vision of an ideal NPO, so nonprofit organization, and its mission? Please identify the key needs of Ukraine as you see them and key activities of a nonprofit.
I love the question. So ideal nonprofit is like, for me, is the one that is not trying to replace the government, but covering gaps in governance. So like when the full-scale invasion started, it was a huge gap in supplying the army. And as a nonprofit, we are much, much faster than the government. Our procurement is much faster. So we can procure fast, we can deliver fast, and we can cover a gap until this like huge state machine is just building the processes. But once the processes are set up, we should step away from this. We shouldn't be trying to replace what governments has to do. So our mission as an NGO should be to cover a gap and also to like push government to do their job. We stopped procuring like helmets and bulletproof vests once the government started to procure them and supply to the military. So I think that the foundation and the individual volunteers who are still raising money for helmets and bulletproof vests are just vesting money that could be placed into like better use, because as of now, every military personnel is getting this protective equipment from the government, from the Ministry of Defense. Same with like food, water, or like clothes, uniforms. Everything is provided by the Ministry of Defense. As a non-profit, as having this luxury of spending money fast enough, we should be focused on something that is not covered yet. Like, for example, tactical medicine, most of items are already covered by the government, but not all of them. And as I know, United Help Ukraine is very good on just providing some items for the IPEX, which are not covered by the government as of yet. But like, we also advocated for the government, to Ministry of Defense, to start procuring good quality medical items. Same with drones. In 2022, we've been buying DJI drones as crazy. We're trying to grab them from all warehouses, like from everywhere, all distributors. But since 2024, when the procurement agency of the Ministry of Defense started to procure them, we are still covering some of them, like for newly created units, or to cover some urgent needs, but we are not buying Chinese drones at a large scale. Now we are focusing on some new technologies, on fiber optics, on drones with automatic targeting, on ground drones that are not procured by the Ministry of Defense yet. So yeah, to answer your question, Yuri, is the best NGO is the one that is not willing to replace the government, but help government to cover gaps.
Thanks, Lyuba. You actually touched, this is a great, I love it. This is what we're trying to do as well. This is what we see our mission right now, is to fill the gap, right? The US government cannot supply humanitarian medical aid at the moment. We've seen in 2022, Ukrainian government was not able to supply like bulletproof vests, tactical medicine, and things like that, and drones, like you said. And now this gap is filled, so we can focus on other things that are missing. And one of them is training. And I think we as an organization, we're switching, like Lyuba said, we're still providing critical elements of first aid kits. But where we see our mission is more important now is train as many people, soldiers, National Guard, police, on using those first aid kits and being able to provide first aid on the ground, whether it's a battlefield, which is a more specific training compared to just general training that unfortunately pretty much everyone in Ukraine should have, how to apply a tourniquet, how to give self-care or someone else who is wounded next to you help. And then we are investing in 2 tactical medicine schools, one in Kyiv, another one in Lviv, that are certified. And I know, Lyuba, we work with Dignitas. We had a couple of trainings that you were training on technology, and our team was helping with the TACMED training. So like you said, I think this is a great, I think I love it that we the good part about NGOs is to be able to shift quickly in response to the needs. And my next question to you, Lyuba and Dmytro as well, what are the needs in Ukraine currently? What is, like you said, technology is number one, right? Anything else that you see besides technology that really needs, like we say, training probably, and training on different levels, like training on technology, training on using, like you said, even smartphones on the battlefield, but also TACMED, anything else that you see a huge need and a gap that we don't fill at the moment?
You're absolutely right about trainings, and trainings pretty much on everything, starting from basic training, from like what's boot camp in US armies, in Ukrainian army is mobilizing approximately 20,000 people a month, and like by the law, they're required to be trained for 2 months at the training centers of the Ukrainian armed forces. So, but there is a huge lack in instructors. A lot of people who used to be instructors, they went fighting active wars. Some of them are being wounded or killed. So there is a huge lack of instructors in some training center. It's about just 10-20% of instructors from the current need of instructors. So currently, the army is willing to work with civilian organization and invite civilian instructors to help with basic training, on psychological training, on shooting training, tactical medicine, technology, so everything, and also equipment for trainings, because most of the equipment that is procured by the Ministry of Defense goes to the front line, and also most of charitable foundation are also willing to provide help to the brigades that actively participate in the war. But we also need training equipment and training drones, training tactical medicine, simulators, sometimes even vehicles to deliver combatants to the training field. So sometimes even basic needs in the training centers are not covered. So I think we should focus more on training centers, because the more prepared people for the war, the less casualties we will have in the future, and I think this it also be more. They also will be more effective at the battlefield. So we should remember that Ukrainian army, unlike US or European armies, are not professional army. It's army of civilians. So imagine they have 2 months to be transferred from civilian, like all us, to military personnel. And during these 2 months, we should really be focused on effective trainings. So trainings, equipment for training, and of course we shouldn't remember for people on the front line and provide them with technological equipment as well.
Thanks. Dima, you want to add something, or we're good? I'm going to move on to the next question.
Yeah, let's move on to the next question. I wanted to highlight the cybersecurity aspect of things, because
okay, go for it.
So what, as well, we live in the world of information, and then on the front lines, communication means life, right? Being connected, but it also presents certain dangers. So what we're also doing is teaching those who will be defending to recognize, what does a phishing email looks like, or because Russians are certainly looking to target Ukrainian military. They're targeting other countries as well, but they are very opportunistic in what they are trying to achieve with hacking, basically, for information, to understand where are the Ukrainian defenders, what are the plans, what are the missions. So understanding basic things of cybersecurity, of who is contacting and why, is important. But it's not only important for military; it's also important for civilians. For US, it's very important to understand that informational warfare, Russia is using disinformation campaigns all the time, and pumping millions of dollars into the US to change the truth about what's going on in Ukraine and discredit Ukraine. And we've seen some of that in my opinion, in some of the rhetoric of the Donald Trump, that aligns with Russian talking points. But also, we've seen there was an article that FBI dismantled a fairly large-scale operation where Russians were fueling, I think, close to $12 million into this company in the US that then was paying news anchors on both sides of the aisle, of the political aisle, to spread misinformation. And those people came out and said that they were unwitting accomplices in that respect, but they were just thought that they were spreading the alternative messages. But you know, essentially, that's how that's something to realize that is very important. Is that critical thinking in processing information is very important, as well as Russia is using disinformation campaigns in Ukraine, trying to sow discord and say, hey, the resistance is futile, it's all zrada, right? In Ukrainian, we've heard of that, and try to spread that information out. So critical thinking is as critical as ever in that respect, to know, hey, does that align with anybody else's narratives? Where did I hear this from? Can Russia benefit from this action? And really not spreading hyped up messages if you don't have to, essentially. So taking a part in that.
Yeah. Thanks. That's actually an important part, because we see a lot of comments in the chat in questions about where we get the tools to spread the truth, right? So we're sending you guys to American Coalition for Ukraine website, but certainly there are others. And what Dmytro said about using critical thinking, it's absolutely essential. And maybe we as organizations should think about doing more of those trainings for people to recognize Russian propaganda from maybe a very benign message that we know it's definitely not true. The facts are not there. And it's really, really disheartening to hear Russian propaganda from, you know, the US president these days. So hopefully we can definitely, you know, join forces and do better at educating people how to counteract that propaganda. Question from Allison, which is really tough. I don't know how to answer. Maybe you guys can help me out. What will United Help Ukraine's, or Dignitas for that sake, role be if, God forbid, Russia wins the war? Will you all just be pushed to the side by the Russian government, or do you think you will be allowed to assist your fellow Ukrainians? I know it's a tough question. I read it. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to answer it. But I think so.
I know. I think if Russia wins, we just won't survive. Like, they won't allow us to live.
True. And I actually sometimes even have concerns about us in the US. If things will go this way, will those Ukrainian organizations, diaspora organizations, survive if rhetorics are completely changed and the US is siding with Russia against Ukraine? Which is definitely a scenario that none of us want to think about. But no, Lyuba is right. I don't think it's going to be really tough for us to continue support Ukrainian people in Ukraine. And I mean, and because we've had those, let me just back for a second. We actually did in the past, we did help Ukrainian people on occupied territories. Back in 2022, when some of the Kherson region and Kharkiv region were occupied, we were trying to help people there. And unfortunately, those people were kidnapped, they were detained, and we were really more afraid of causing harm to those who we helped than helping them with essentials that they required. So to be honest, it might be actually even harmful for those who will be, God forbid, on Russian occupied territory in Ukraine to receive help from us. But again, it's a very tough question, something for us to think about. But again,
I don't think it's gonna happen in any nearest future. Like 3 years ago, when we were in much worse situations, and now like all Western world gave us 3 weeks, and we survived, and we proved to the entire world that Ukrainians are like very resilient people, and we can stand against much bigger country. And now even train Taiwanese how to act if something happened to them, because they see that Ukrainian situation with Russia is very similar to what they are expecting to have with China.
And
Yeah, I wanted to add that it's important to stay together, and yes, you have to be aware of the risks and the threats that Russia presents. But again, we've been doing this for 3 years. This is not ending. Unfortunately, the war is not ending tomorrow. But as long as we're sticking to what we're doing, Ukraine will win.
And I want to add to what Lyuba was saying, and Dmytro as well. Lyuba was saying that the Ukrainian army is comprised of civilians. But just let me tell you that this is now probably one of the strongest armies in the world. Army with real combat experience, with new technologies. That is not that many armies in the world had a chance to deploy, and in combat that unfortunately Europe hasn't, or the world hasn't seen since World War II. So this is, again, Ukraine is in the position of power in terms of on the front lines, what's happening on the front lines, from my opinion personally. So, but it's interesting to hear that question and think, what if? What's the worst case scenario? Like, I don't even think it's a worst case scenario, but it's like beyond imaginable. But I think we're all optimistic it's not going to happen ever. Not quick, but a great question from Jackie. Hi, Jackie Colgan. It is imperative, as Dima said, to contact your elected officials. We said that regularly and often. Absolutely agree. We sent it to American Coalition for Ukraine side. Those opposed to our continued aid are vocal. So we must be more vocal. Totally agree. And this is, again, I think we definitely all of us agreed on that. And Dmytro really touched upon every point, how you can do it very well. And hope that message came across as super important. Engage non-Ukrainians, absolutely agree. That's what we're doing. Yes, and Jackie, I know you're doing a terrific work as well as a representative from New Jersey. Our government has the ability to provide much greater support than any of us. Absolutely agree. And Dmytro just said it. If you want to help thousands, you can donate to a charity. If you want to help millions, help the policy. And the work for the people who has elected them. All agree. Thank you so much, Jackie, for this comment. Also refute the false Russian propaganda. Again, we talked about it to everyone with whom you speak. I think this is important, and it's back to previous questions and comments, to have this fact checks, and we already are trying to provide them. What's false, what's true, and then sort of making sure that the truth is more spread than the lies that we hear right now. Again, question from Elena. What about helping Dignitas and UHU specifically? Do your orgs have needs that Americans can help with? And I think we also talked about the needs of our organizations. And I think we talked about, and I think Lyuba did too, is for any nonprofit, donations are super important, so financial support. But also you can volunteer for organization, bring your talents. If you know you're good at writing, you can come to any nonprofit organization and everyone will grab you and say thank you, because there are so many communication pieces that we need you to write. So that's whatever your talent is. We have people who just come to volunteer for a specific project or stay with us and help, like Dmytro said. There's definitely a whole variety of positions that can be really filled by a volunteer. And importantly, spread the word. I think this is one of the other things that we all would say: talk to your friends, your relatives, corporations, especially foundations. You see something, you tell the truth, you tell about organizations that you trust and how important it is to support them. And Lyuba, Dmytro, do you want to add anything to this?
Just another need that I've been over the past couple of days talking we try to keep in touch with other nonprofits to coordinate and just talk about common issues or successes. If you're a website developer or somebody who's knows with technology, it helps to help in that respect, to build a website, to fix something, redo, maybe adjust them, search engine optimization, things like that. Even those that you can do professional engagements that you can dedicate a couple of 5 to 10 hours a week in your off time. That goes a long way for another organization to be more effective in spreading the messages, to getting the donations and things like that. So every little bit counts. Contact us. Our needs change all the time, but then again, don't be afraid to offer your services just because services as a volunteer in a certain professional field, or just in general, your motivation matters a lot.
Great, thanks. Lyuba, you want to add something too?
Yeah, I would just, I don't know, repeat what was already told. So there are 4 points, 4 actions that you can do. You can donate, you can volunteer, you can advocate, and you can serve.
I like the 4 points. Maybe here on this call, but no, this is important.
Yeah, Ukrainian army is recruiting foreign volunteers. So there are 4 international battalions fighting at the front lines. They have different positions, not only for combatants, but also for people to work in the offices, like lawyers, writers, even like social media specialists, because the modern war is not just fighting, it's also covering in the social media what's happening in your battalion.
That's so true. Thanks. This is a great addition. Okay, so there is a comment from Melanie. Hi, Melanie. So Marina, Lyuba, Dmytro, thank you for this important discussion. My heart goes out to all of your friends and families. As a Latvian American whose family had to flee Latvia due to Soviet during World War II, my family has compassion and respect for all Ukrainians. My question for all of you, while Baltic Americans and Ukrainian Americans know full well about Russian Putin, how do we inform others who may not have the background? How do we advocate for Ukraine, for our fellow Americans? I think this is the question that we kind of touched over and over. I think this is the same theme that we will come back to, that when so many Americans are getting, again, propaganda machines at all levels, news channels, our president, and people are just watching it all in disbelief. So agree with all this. And America, so even though Trump is clearly focused overseas, whether it's Greenland, Canada. And so I think, Melanie, thanks for your comments. And we just said, you can easily advocate, you can easily reach out to your representative, start with your community, talk about, and then there were questions about posts and how we have messaging already, packages prepared, you can use them. We'll do a better job on distributing that information to everyone, that you guys can use it. Especially, I think super important to have this fact check. This is the post, this is the message. And I think French Prime Minister Macron did a great job contradicting and kind of counteracting a lie in front of millions, saying, no, this is not the war that Ukraine started, and no, we did not want money back. It's not the loan. It's not a loan. It's actually we're helping. This is the aid that we're providing. So I think this is super important when you hear someone saying things that are not true, to talk, but again, in a calm, peaceful, and constructive way, and present facts that are true. And we know that those facts are true. But thanks, Melanie, for your support. Chris,
just tell your story and story of your family. I think it's the best way to convince people. I was in Davos last month, and I really like the speech of the president of Finland, who was telling the story how Finland was at the war with Russia. And through this personal story, through the story of his family, like he was advocating European society and some of American visitors to help Ukraine just through the story of his family from another country. So I think it's true for all Baltic countries, true for Ukrainian, for people from Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia. All these countries experienced the influence of Russia and military influence of Russia. So just by telling our own stories, we can convince people.
Absolutely agree. This is a great addition. I think we all can. We have so many personal stories that it's going to be very easy to share with people. Chris Kononenko agrees that a social media toolkit will be helpful. We'll work on it. We got this. This is today heard a couple of times. This is a great comment. We will work on it. Yuri Dechikivsky, our big supporter of all organizations. I don't know what organization he did not support during the past decades. It's not just 10 years of this war, but decades of support from Yuri and his family. And he's thanking Dmytro and Lyuba. And he's been interacting with one woman who helps manage the ZSU drone pilot training facility. And he is asking if you can provide a brief overview on current status of drone operations training in Ukraine. I think, Lyuba, you did that, but if you want to just in a few words, or maybe directly also connect with Yuri to help him understand the situation. But maybe for us, it would be good.
Yeah, I will just add on civilian trainings, because like for military training, you can go to our website. We have a Google form to fill out and to be invited for the training. But we realize that training on civilians is also important, because most of the civilians trying to be prepared for the war and for like active service in the military. So next month we are planning to open school with short programs for civilians. It won't be as long program as we do for military, but for people just to try out drone operating, both UAV and UGV, flying drones and ground drones. So follow our social media, our website. I think we'll have announced very soon about our school for civilians.
That's great. And in terms of training, just a quick question. How many organizations besides, of course, the military forces, besides Victory Drones and Dignitas, how many other organizations are providing specifically technology and drone operating trainings that you know, the large ones that also cooperate with the armed forces?
One of the biggest one is a school called Bureviter. It was founded by Pritula Foundation, but now they work as a separate training school. They cover a lot on technology, software, and drone operating, also both flying and ground drones. So there are a lot of smaller schools. So I don't know, it's like few dozens of them in Ukraine right now. But yeah, Bureviter and Victory Drones, the biggest one right now. And we also partner with Third Assault Brigade, who have the Kill House School in Kyiv. It's school for civilians. Of course, during this training, they're trying to recruit you to Third Assault Brigade, but it's not required. So you can just finish the civilian course and go to any other brigades or still be civilian.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And the last comments, we're running close to our time limit. And this is again from Chris Kononenko. How do we mobilize, starting with every Ukrainian church, Zoom Plus, youth organization, or Ukrainian school, to get people to contact their Congress people? Can we organize information sessions, call, write your Congress marathons, training on how to do this? Not everyone writes or calls, but if there was such event, it might be helpful. Just an idea. Chris, totally agree. In the past, we've had those marathons. They were provided by American Coalition for Ukraine and other organizations, where they would teach you and sort of maybe we should start doing it again on a regular basis, where we do have advocacy calls weekly. People can join, and we also provide some sort of training. We do provide training when people come for Ukraine Action Summits. So, but I think this is a great idea that we might need to have like a much larger scale, like on a much larger scale, reach out to every Ukrainian community and make sure we all align our messaging, and we all, because that's what's going to happen is once we amplify our voices, that would be, yes, and also call and write the White House, Yuri saying, I agree. But I think if we have the same message and it comes from the entire community and also from all the states in the US, that's what's going to create the biggest impact in terms of shifting the messaging in hopefully in the US administration.
Yeah, so to add on that, I've been thinking about that as well, as how do we mobilize people? It's important to mobilize people, but it's also important to realize that not everybody knows how to advocate, especially as immigrants. I didn't go to school here in the US, meaning, middle school, high school. I came right after. But I know that there is certain political education that happens in the school system that kids are being taught. But there needs to be some baseline refresh about how do you advocate, how do you find your representatives and things like that. So we may want to maybe do some baseline training to tell people how to do it. It doesn't have to be long, it could be quick. And then maybe continuous education can be to say, hey, here's the latest development. Yes, Ukraine is still important. Keep calling, but here are the messages that are distilled from whatever that is happening over the past week in that respect. Marina already mentioned there's a weekly call that's going on from the coalition that holds on Wednesdays. So maybe we could just promote more of that education once we're ready to take it to that level to people who do not know yet how to, and we can help them to make that call. A lot of people don't realize that you can call now off hours and leave a message, and leaving a message is not as scary as talking to a real person. And you can do it at 10 p.m. from comfort of your phone. Call, leave a message, and let me tell you, it adds up, and you become sounding a lot better over time. So it's practice, but need to make the first step as well.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot of comments in this regard. So we probably will, kind of talk amongst ourselves and see how we can get this message out, make sure people have this training. Because another comment from Catherine Cretu, she says that we need to expand advocacy training to other sympathetic interest groups. My local Democratic Women's Club is one of the examples. All members say they support Ukraine, but we need trainings for everyday Americans. Absolutely agree. And I think this is something that I've been talking as well as a professor at Georgetown University. My colleagues at the university, professors, are also trying to come together to make sure we can also mobilize the youth. I think this is one of the resources that is still untapped, I think, and also might not have, they probably remember from their school days what to do, but we really need to mobilize them. And I think this is not just about Ukraine anymore. This is really about human rights and freedoms in the US. And who else would stand up for this misinformation, disinformation, and actually some of the unconstitutional acts that we see now than the youth. So this is, again, not just us, but I think the biggest challenge is also to get the youth mobilized and participate in those efforts. Okay, so with this, we're already past 2:15. It was amazing, and I think Melanie had the last comment. would be happy to provide them. Okay, yeah, definitely. So this is the same, again, the same message that we have to come together. Many communities will join to support Ukraine, because Baltic countries are next on the chopping block, unfortunately. I would like to thank you, Lyuba and Dmytro, for this really informative, great conversation. I would like to thank our audience for great questions. I think it was very interactive, and I love that we were able to answer all of them. So we will continue to send with Ukraine. Last comments from Lyuba and Dmytro. Again, thank you so much. I really enjoyed today's webinar, and thank you all who joined us. Please continue to support Ukraine, support our organizations. If not us, find someone else who you know and trust. And really, it's collective efforts that will help Ukraine win this war sooner.
Yes. Thank you for having us, and pleasure to be here and share our thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Same for me. It was pleasure to see Marina and also names of people who we work with for last 11 years. And I will try to come to DC for the next Action Summit. It will be in April. Right?
That's terrific. And everyone else who is here on call, please register and come see us.
Yeah, come see us. I will bring stories from the front line.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lyuba, Dmytro, and thank you all. And thank you on the back end, Darina and Lilia, for your technical support and organizing this webinar. Very grateful for United Help Ukraine's team to be, again, a lead on these efforts and supporting Ukrainian people, but also making sure our community stays together, informed, and continue to help. Thank you.